Hello, everyone. Welcome back, or for the first time, to the Good Doctors YouTube channel and our coverage of Bridgerton. I am Dr. Kristen.
I'm Dr. Erin.
And we are two PhDs who study social science. We love pop culture and we also love romance novels, and that's why we're here. So if you haven't already joined us for the past 6 episodes, good news, we have a lot of YouTube viewing for you. So much, including 3 bonus episodes that look at different aspects of this show. So we have a summary on what romance novels kind of are, a bit of a conversation on what we're hearing and what we've observed about the ideas of representation on the show, and then one specifically about body types and how they talk about bodies on the show. So launching in now to episode 7. Want you to know that we both believe 7 and 8 should each probably be 2 to 3 episodes on their own. Like, they just pack a whole lot of stuff in here, some of which we don't particularly care about, and some of which we really wish they could have given some more room to. So the tour de force of this episode is that we spend time with every single character.
It's really all the characters.
Even though we spent anyway. I have so many questions about pacing and plotting. If I ever meet Chris Van Dusen, I think that actually might be my question, is like, talk to me about why the wedding was in episode 5. Why wasn't it in episode 3? So, oh man.
Yes, a lot of questions. I mean, if I was a showrunner, I would have done this differently, suffice to say.
For sure, as looking at the pacing of the book. So first up, let's talk about Marina and Colin really quickly. So at the end of the last episode, Lady Whistledown spills the beans that Marina is preggers. Spoiler alert for anyone who doesn't know, Penelope is Lady Whistledown. So when I hit this point in the show, I was like, but that's terrible because now she's ruined her own life. I don't care for this.
Yeah, I feel like Pen was pushed into a corner, and she clearly, and this is the Penelope in the books. Doesn't really ever think she's going to get married. Certainly doesn't think she's going to fall in love. Is definitely aware that her love for Colin is one-sided. And so I was putting a lot of that into her, even in this series, and they hadn't shown us all of that yet. And so I think at the end of the last episode, when she did that, I was like, oh, Pen, like, she's saving Colin. She doesn't care about her own reputation. I'm like, but girl, you just tanked your sisters too.
Yeah.
And that's not my favorite thing that you've done, Penelope.
So what we discover is that, the very few people are as quietly and righteously angry as Violet Bridgerton when her children are wronged. Colin is essentially still ready to kind of do the right thing, but because of Lady Whistledown, he can't. It's just not, that can't happen. That's not what this looks like. So Marina feels that she can do the only thing that she can, and she tries an abortifacient and to get rid of the child. We are going to link in the show notes a book actually about the history of homemade abortifacients in the 19th century England. If you're a nerd and want to go down that route, I've read some good reviews of that particular book. Of course, it doesn't work because a lot of them didn't, and they were very deadly. And thankfully, she has intervention from the Featherington family doctor and therefore does not lose her life. Continuing along with the Marina and Colin storyline, we stay with Marina. We, discover, of course, the Featheringtons are, persona non gratas all around town. I don't feel bad for Portia Featherington necessarily, but the actor, all the performances in this are great. We get. However, this is where Diamond and Saphne's story intersects Marina's, and that we get once it is known what has happened with Colin and Marina, Daphne and Simon come back from Cliveden, and Daphne in a way befriends Marina, and we actually get some of the best conversations with Marina that we could have ever had in a way. And we see that, if Daphne's going to live this life as the Duchess, as she now thinks she's going to have to, with a husband who doesn't love her and is lying to her and all those other things, how is she going to be a Duchess? And good news, this is how she's going to be a Duchess. This is uplifting other women, keeping women safe, providing resources, doing advocacy. That's how she's going to be a Duchess. And that was really gratifying to see. And then, so I pause on Marina's story. Let's go back to Daphne and Simon, who at the beginning of the episode are not speaking.
Nope.
and there is a whole lot of very good visual cues as to how they are not speaking. In the books, they at this point are apart, and I actually kind of like that when Daphne gets the summons to go back to London, Simon demands to go with her. It's one of the few changes from the book that I really appreciated. I liked that kind of dynamic, and it forced them. I also really, really love, just as a Regency trope, when the spouses are fighting, but the rake cannot possibly live without a breath from his wife. Like, as the Vulture recap said, put it in my veins.
Yeah, forced proximity is always a trope that we both feel really strongly about. And I agree. I liked that they made that change, and that because, you know, for all the faults of these last 2 episodes, what they do is such a fantastic job of doing, and especially Regé-Jean Page in acting the pants off, literally and figuratively, of Simon in these 2 episodes, is showing his evolution towards love and acceptance. And like, it's such a small thing at the beginning that like he feels super betrayed and he's angry, but he was like, I will not tolerate us being separated. And I'm like,
that is not happening. I'm like,
because you love her. So like, it's these little things, the push and pull between the 2 of them in these 2 episodes should have been 4 episodes, would have been so much more dramatic. But both Phoebe Dynevor and Regé-Jean Page do like chef's kiss with the back and forth of we're hurting each other, we're pretending we're not hurting each other, we're pretending we're the in love couple, we're pretending we're mad at each other when we're not really mad, and like, it's so good.
So we end Simon and Daphne's story in this particular episode with Daphne getting her period. And it is very, it's very dramatic in an appropriate way, for all the symbolism that her menstruation in this moment brings with it. That's where we end their thing. So some other small storylines. We've got Eloise as a directive from Queen Charlotte on the hunt for Lady Whistledown, which I cared 0% about and was actually generally annoyed by, because I knew who Lady Whistledown was, and I don't like this version of Eloise that much.
And like it was a waste of Eloise. Like,
yeah, it just wasn't. It created some tension between her and Penn that we didn't need now when they kind of reunite in this episode, which I do. We get Penn and Louise back together, so I was happy about that. There's another really annoying thing with Lord Featherington and money and how he's terrible at it. Again, don't care, but essentially he is a terrible human being.
Yep.
All of his terribleness is possibly an explanation as to one of the reasons Portia is as hungry as she is, because he is 0% trustworthy. And she's kind of had to scramble to do everything for all of them, which makes a little bit of sense to me. But Ben Miller did a great job with the part. He often plays these kind of like middle of the road, mediocre guys that get away with things because of their birthright, and he does a great job. And as kind of that, he tries to finagle Will the boxer into this. Again, if we had had more time, I would have loved more Will the boxer and a lot less Lord Featherington. But it also felt like a weird way to say goodbye to Will, since we all know we're going to say goodbye to Will at the end of this season because he doesn't follow us to book 2. I don't know. It just all felt awkward, and because it's an interesting question of how do you feed your family?
Yeah.
When your body is how you feed your family, and your body only has a certain, it's a fascinating question that we didn't do anything with.
Yeah, and like the conversation even with Simon that he had about it felt really rushed, of what does it mean to be a provider, and what, like, how do you balance providing for your family and any sort of like morality or right and wrong. And you know, I thought it could have been a lot more potently explored if they had given Will more time. And like we kind of get Simon coming around to it when he sees them at the party, which is I think in the next episode, at Hastings' house. And you know, he's bought his wife a new necklace with the winnings. And it makes him happy, but like I just felt like it was a great kind of story, especially unique to that time too, of Regency era, and they just kind of breezed through it all. And I mean, so much of the boxing fight itself, like it was fine, but then that also meant that we got Anthony and Sienna having sex under the bleachers, and I was like, I don't care for this at all. I'm over Sienna. I thought we were done with Sienna. You told me we were done with Sienna. I just, y'all, it's just not my favorite thing that they did this season.
No, like we know Kate is coming.
Yeah, and at this point, as the point that we're filming this, she has been cast.
She has been cast, and we are big fans of the casting.
Big fans.
Big fans of the casting.
Yeah.
I will also say, like, unless he does some serious work, this Anthony is not worthy of my Kate. So no. he's gotta do some more work than Book Anthony had to do.
Got a steep hill to climb, our Anthony.
Steep hill to climb, our Anthony does. So 2 more short things. We get an interesting conversation. Benedict meets up with Lord. The name is escaping me.
Granville,
thank you. And essentially Granville's like, hey, being gay is really shitty. And this is how my wife and I, in her full consent, have decided to navigate this world.
Yeah.
Then we also have, no, we already covered Sienna because you covered it for me. That ticks off the box. So
yeah.
But the big storyline with Daphne that we would like to spend conservatively 17 hours talking about is Lady Danbury's House of Iniquity. Den of Iniquity.
Married ladies only ball.
Like, I actually paused it and screamed, Daphne's gonna have friends.
Yeah. So how nice. And like, I think this scene gets juxtaposed with the gossip scene in episode 2 or 3 that we also gushed over.
2, yeah.
In terms of exploring what women's lives look like and the privilege, the literal privilege that comes with money for these women is that Lady D can create, as I've started calling her in my head, Lady D can create this environment where they can just have fun and be outside the bounds of judgment and society and drink and gamble and all these, be humans that like to do fun things rather than women that have to fit into the box that society has created for them. And that Lady Danbury sees that as her job to do this is peak Lady Danbury, first of all. And also just about one of my favorite things that happened literally in this entire show. And not in the books. So this was a real surprise for all of us. And this is what makes me so excited about what they're doing with the books, is if they're going to keep doing stuff like this.
Yep.
Super excited about it. That last scene with Lady Danbury, where it's like the morning after and she's sitting there like drinking her, I don't know, port in her fancy pajamas with like all the servants cleaning up after her. I was like, she is living her best life. But yeah, and that's also where we get some of Daphne's development in terms of figuring out who she gets to be, who she can be as a duchess. It's also important that she sees that all these other women of the ton are not in happy, loving marriages.
Yeah.
And that hers was the exception, not the rule. And I think she knew that, but to see that like she's really mad at Simon, and justifiably so, but there's all these other women who are in worse positions. And so you can kind of see her wheels start turning, like, maybe I'm not as mad at Simon as I think I am, because at least, he talks to me and he finds me attractive. Not saying those are like the markers of a good relationship, but like she starts to work through some of her frustration.
Overall, this is the episode for me that I would hold up with episode 2 in a certain way. Like, we've talked a lot about the female gaze and like how there's lots of asses in this show. But if we really want to talk about how this centers women's experiences in Regency, the way that, Jonathan Bailey talks about, and how it deconstructs toxic masculinity and kind of all this stuff. are the fact that, or episode 2 where it talks about gossip and power, and then this episode where it's all about pregnancy and the realities of pregnancy and the realities of choice and the realities of education, and in a way that was not ashamed of either conversation. Neither did it trivialize it. It was just very, this is what a Marina Thompson would have done. And this is how a Daphne Bridgerton would have reacted to getting her period, and how tied menstruation is to power in a very, very interesting way. I appreciated this episode for that. I mean, all the things I was frustrated about, I don't care about Lord Featherington. I'm angry that we short-shafted Will, et cetera, et cetera. But the moments, I really liked what we did with Daphne in this episode. And I liked how we followed Daphne. And I like how Daphne was a lot of our lights into things. From a Regency trope watch, let me not forget to say that one of the other major tropes of Regency showed up in this episode, in which Portia Featherington attempts to speak to the Bridgertons during a dress making encounter at Lady Delacroix's, and the Bridgertons give her the cut direct. Guys,
big trope.
Big trope.
Yeah,
essentially shot her right in the heart.
Yeah.
And I wanted to call that out before we on trope watch. Beep 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 beep.
Beep, beep, beep. Trope watch.
We get forced proximity, we get chosen forced proximity, and we get the cut direct.
I got another trope in there. There's so much that happened in this episode, you guys. Like,
I know, I'm sure we're forgetting things, even though we took copious notes.
I'm like looking at my notes. I'm like, oh, we didn't talk about this yet. What I would like to talk about in terms of the female gaze,
okay,
as well, is the power of showing oral sex between Simon and Daphne.
Okay.
Big in this episode, big in the romance genre, not big on the television ever.
No, big in the previous episode too.
Yeah. So that, happens again, and I just think it's worth noting that this is an exceptional thing, literally, that is happening. It does not happen very often. We do need to mention briefly Anthony and Simon's confrontation.
Yes, of course.
It seemed forced, but I think what they were trying to do was hint at some of Anthony's daddy issues.
And oh boy, does he have a steamer trunk full. So maybe, but I still it was still weird.
It was still weird. I didn't like that they had fisticuffs over it. But Anthony insults him and brings up Simon's relationship with his dad, and Simon turns the both literal and figurative tables.
It felt very much like two wounded puppies sniping at each other.
Yeah.
And I understand that men don't use their words to settle conflicts the way that I would like them to, especially not at this time in history. But this one felt particularly...
Especially these two men, not super good with the words.
No.
But yeah, it just felt like, and we were talking about this before we started filming this recap offline, that so many things happened in this episode that it was hard for me to invest in a lot of them.
Yeah.
So we've talked about in previous episodes, some of the queer coding that's going on the show, whether or not it's queer baiting, we reserve judgment. But this conversation with Granville and Benedict, where he clearly is not judging him for the homosexuality. He is judging him for the lying.
Yeah.
Which is an interesting and important point, because he could be in another circumstance judging him for his sexuality, but he's not. And Granville, it was so rushed, Granville explaining how hard it is to be attracted to same-sex people at this time in the world. And again, for a show that really wanted to be champions of diversity, I was like, cool, spend more time with Granville. Unpack instead of just fly-by references to how hard it is to be in love with another man and to hide in your marriage. And he's lucky enough that he found a woman that is happy she gets protection and she gets status and access to things that she didn't have if she wasn't married. She can sleep with whoever she wants, including Benedict. But It just seemed like, whoa, we have to talk about this. We're like speeding past everything on a freeway. And yeah, we get all of this in one episode.
Yeah.
Was a lot.
Yeah.
And I really would have loved if they had just spent more time on these dueling ideas of pregnancy and keeping the baby. It's a massive, massive thing for Daphne to not be pregnant because she literally sees that as her only chance. And like it was all, they did give that its proper dramatic fare, but by the time we got to it, I was so exhausted from everything else.
And I just, as I sat there at the end of it, I was like, okay, so we have 60 minutes to get to the happily ever after. Like I got 60 minutes to get to the epilogue where I know we get a baby. How do we do 100 pages of the book?
All of this.
In 60 minutes.
Yeah.
And spoiler alert, we did, but did we?
It's a lot of spinning plates. And I just wish they would have A, removed some of the plates, or B, added some episodes. And like maybe they only got an 8 episode.
And that's my guess is that Netflix said 8 episodes. Cool. Get rid of the prince and put the wedding in episode 4.
Like, you do not need to spend that much time with Lord Featherington and his gambling problems. There are ways that you can talk about the precariousness that Portia Featherington finds herself in, trying to get 3 daughters married, not having given birth to a son, which we haven't really even touched about, but is like trope watch so big. And we get to at the end of the 8th episode, the hint of who the new Lord Featherington is. But like we could have done that in a simpler way that didn't involve so much of Ben Miller, who is fantastic, but we only had so much time, y'all.
We only had so much time. So on that note, we only have so much time as well. We will end here and see you again next week for episode 8.
Take care, everybody.
Bye.